Look at this, Renee. What are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to dive into a brand new series. I'm kind of excited about it. What we're going to do is you're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into all the things that you've learned, all of the good things that you've taken into account on all your travels the last couple of years. I know at the end of 2025, the beginning of 2026, those two podcasts, we kind of summed up in a big nutshell, kind of all the places you've been and things that you've seen. But today, we're going to kick off a series of some of the learning lessons and actually dive into them. And I think this series will be really, really helpful for people who are out on the ground wondering like how to make change, where those barriers are, where we can get some leverage to make change. So I'm excited about this. It really is that on the ground and with examples and stories from all over the country of people trying to make better systems. So I'm really excited about diving into that. But before we do, what's going on the farm today? We're at the end of January. What's happening?
Oh, it's just working on stuff, getting everything ready, getting my old equipment to hold together for one more season because there's nothing new coming to Hickory Grove Family Farm under these financial conditions, Renee.
Oh,
So it's a lot of welding and duct tape.
a lot of duct tape.
A
Are you
lot of
still
duct tape.
using duct tape at the bottom of those
Oh,
bins?
I got some extra duct tape. What's
Oh,
that bit? Where was I using?
the bottom of the bin you poked a hole in with the new bin that you poked a hole in with the
No,
thing
we got
last year.
that
Is that duct
fixed.
tape
We're
or
not
is that
talking
like,
about that. Nope, that was all professionally fixed
oh,
last
good.
year. So
It was
we're
just duct
good.
taped for that end of that
It's
one season.
temporarily. That's what duct tape is, a temporary fix. So
Okay. I was very confused about duct tape because that seemed like a lot of potential holes in a very expensive thing for duct tape, but glad to hear it worked. Good thing.
duct tape fixes everything.
Duct tape fixes everything. All right. So, quick fact for you. In my office, we have murder files of John Gacy, was one of the most famous serial killers in our state. And they keep the murder file in this drawer, and this drawer like always rolls open. And so they've pink duct taped it shut to
See,
protect the
that's good.
murder files. So
Yeah.
you're right. Duct tape protects
See?
everyone from everything. It's a wild thing. So you bet you didn't know that. So today we're going to dive into kind of like an overview. So 2025, we've talked about this, and we have a couple of podcasts at the end of 25, beginning of 26. If you haven't heard them, you might want to go back. But we were in like 14, 15 states in 2025, mostly Jason, and all over the place. And now we're working in contracts in Illinois, in Colorado, finished up one in Iowa. And so we've got a really good look and a picture about behavioral health, especially like what's working on the ground and what's not. So we're going to do some lesson learns in here and then talk about like what is working and kind of what's not. So to kick us off though, let's kind of recap, like what are some of the challenges that you see, kind of those themes. And we did a deeper dive on this at the end of the year, but just to give everybody a fresh look before we dive into this series, what are some of those challenges you were seeing out there on the ground?
Well, it's just legislation and
Yeah.
policy and how it's developed. And, we'll talk about this more in a later episode, but I was at an interim committee meeting at our local capital earlier this week, Renee, and our legislators have no idea or understand the complexities of what they're talking about. And so I just scratch my head going, they don't take the time. I made it to an interim committee meeting. The interim committee meeting was one 90-minute meeting a week before the report was due.
Yeah, that's a mess. And what's fun fact for all of those that are listening, Renee Schulte, myself, wrote that rule that they're having a problem with when it was defined as something totally different,
Yeah.
literally now 12 to 13 years ago, this rule was passed. So now they're trying to shove a different program into the rule that the rule wasn't made for. And so they're calling it the same name. We love to do that, recycle the name, fine. But they're trying to force a program that was never, that rule wasn't written for that, which is all fine and good. But it's funny to me that people are trying to say, well, the rule is wrong. The rule was right for what it was supposed to be
Yeah.
written for. I wrote it. Now they've made it to be that this applies to this rule. That doesn't work because that rule wasn't written for that at all. So I'm not offended. I think it's hilarious. But you're right. It's funny. Legislators, even bureaucrats, they get stuck in this thing about trying to shove a round peg into this square hole because they're like, oh, we've got this level of care. Let's make this thing this. Well, my
And no
friends,
one and no one
doesn't.
understands it holistically, and no one's willing to share the real story behind it because it may make HHS look bad, or the legislators don't know the right questions to ask. And so you just sit on the sidelines going, I know why that is. And that's
And you
not
may be one
true.
of the few that do
I
because
am
you were
probably
there
one of the
then.
I know.
You,
I'm probably one of the only ones in the room. Like, I know what really happened there. Like, I know the skeletons that are in the
yep,
closet, Renee.
right.
And I did go up to the co-chair after the meeting. I'm like, you need to look at this because you're not going to understand it till you look at this. Trust me. Because I'm
Well, and
like,
fun fact, I
no.
mean, like you're not invited to speak, and you've been the MAC committee chair for the Medicaid for decade.
Right,
I wrote the stuff. Nobody's asking me about it.
right.
And I'm like, you the history would help you because sometimes the other thing that I find fun, and this is the challenge we see, is people might think that people will be offended if we change it. I'm seriously here to tell you I wouldn't be offended if you changed it because it's not about what it was about anymore. So the system has changed so much in that 10, 15 years that some of these rules don't apply at all. So why in the world would I be offended? But people are like, oh, I don't know if we should change that rule. Those people that built that and were built upon could be insulted. And I'm like, oh, for heaven's sakes. And so it's like, there's just really wild things about that. So legislators will be like, oh, I don't know if we should change it, but they don't even know what it was, why it was, anything else. So besides just really being uninformed, which is one of our challenges we're seeing across the whole country, what else are some of those challenges that you sort of touch base on?
Well, a lack of a champion, right? Somebody has to take the bull by the horns and say, we need a change here. Somebody has to go advocate. We just talked about how ineffective interim committees are. But I
Yeah.
mean, really, that's how you shine light on issues. So you do need someone to advocate, to bring it to the top, to advocate for a real interim committee that's actually going to dig in and give a report back to the legislature that has some meaningful solutions to it. But somebody's got to spearhead that, and someone has to be able to move that forward. And we just see an absence of that all across the country today.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that's really hard when we're thinking about that too is the people that are involved that really know the system. Sometimes, to your point, they were trying to cover it over, not discuss
Yep.
it. So they don't want to talk about the failures or things that are wrong. But what's really wild in this space, because this was about children's services, they've been sued.
Right.
They've paid so much money out in a settlement, and they, by law, have to fix this, and they put 90 minutes toward it. That's
Right.
just insane. I mean, so it's like you are in so much trouble about it. And that's what came out is that 90 minutes was worth your time of people who didn't know anything about it. I mean, that doesn't make me feel good about how the resolution of that lawsuit's going to go. I mean, because
Yep.
that's a problem. And so I don't know. I find it really weird. So we're going to dive in now to some of the key trends and data that we see for kind of the why behind the work that we do. So Jason, kind of dive into like what are we seeing? You used to get really good data, and we used to always use this in your talks about like current anxiety scores and depression scores, and then they sort of got away from all the data. But we found some data points today, and we'll put it in our show notes so people can see. So what are we seeing really in that anxiety, depression? Like where are we in loneliness? Like where are we going with all of that? Are we still struggling? Are we seeing any improvement since COVID? Kind of where are we? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, what the themes we're seeing across the country is depression and anxiety are still way up.
Mm-hmm.
We see repeated studies telling us that people aren't okay. And I'm seeing more and more of it just on, random podcasts I tune into that have nothing to do with behavioral health of, especially in the agricultural community right now
Mm-hmm.
of, talking about it's okay not to be okay. I mean, these are horribly stressful financial times
Yes.
for anyone in the ag sector, many sectors. We see it in the mining industry in
Yes.
Colorado, where mines are shutting down. People's way of life for generations is changing. And so we see these transitions happening all over. We see, employers who are moving their workforce around at higher rates than they ever have. So we're kind of all living on edge. Turn into the news on any given day. We're all just kind of living on edge in this country, and that's having an impact on our emotional well-being.
Yeah, and what's really scary is they've got some data in here specifically like University of Michigan showing drops in like moderate to severe depression from 44% down to 37 or anxiety from 37 to 32. That sounds great, but though that indicator pre-COVID was around 11, 12%.
Right.
So we are still three times higher than we were pre-COVID. So that was 2020 for those of you that are too young to remember or weren't paying attention. So it's been 5 years, 5 years worth of data. And so we're still double, triple higher than where we were before COVID. And so, that's a problem. And so yes, the metrics have lagged and they're maybe looking back, but that's still really, really high. And so that we're done to 1 in 3, where we used to be 1 in 10 or so that were, having struggles. And so now it really is, it's one person on either yourself is struggling or the person next to you on either side of you, one of you is having a challenge. And so we talk about that a lot. And that's really important because well, it's job security for us. I mean, this is still going to be such a big, big issue. And moving forward, especially we just mentioned the kind of the economy and some of the changes with, policies and stuff. We're going to just be struggling with getting services for people. And there's way more people who need it.
And there's two other trends I think it's notable that we need to talk about. One is we're reading all the time that we're all drinking less, and that's been something we talk a lot about is how much we drink in rural communities. And now it appears we're kind of getting healthier, maybe. And so I think that's an interesting trend that we're kind of trying to sort out. Is that actually happening in rural communities? We know younger generations are drinking less, but I think there's still some things to sort out there because what is happening across our rural communities, and is that data really reflecting of what's happening?
Yeah, and my concern, because I'm in the prison side of this, is people have switched from alcohol to other things.
Right.
It's not necessarily healthier. It's wilder. When we started with medical cards for marijuana, but there's a lot of people that have a lot of bad side effects from those choices. And so I just met with a gentleman this week who background schizophrenia, bipolar mania, and he thinks he can do a couple of things. He thinks one, he could use edibles. Well, if you look at what that is, it could bring back psychosis and mania. So that's not a good choice. His other choice was like an antabuse type medication, also increases psychosis and mania. And so it's like, you're talking about flipping from alcohol because he's an alcoholic to these other things that he thinks will help him. But the side effects are actually the problem that he was having to begin with. And so are we really getting healthier? So I think we're going to have to, as us, as rural policy partners, look at some of those other types of drugs too and start putting those kind of more side by side in some, and it may be hard to find some of this data, but as edibles and things have become much more common, we need to have that next to, because the rates of anxiety and depression would be going down if their changes were helping. The
Right.
changes aren't helping. So we're drinking less, but what are we doing to still maintain those high depression and anxiety scores? And I don't know the answer quite yet.
The last one I think that I find fascinating, and we've been talking about it all year because of the big beautiful bill, or B3, or however we're going to talk about it, is we've had all these conversations about dollars, but the
Yep.
one number that I keep going back to is the untreated behavioral health costs to the U.S.
Mm,
economy is $282 billion.
yeah.
And you can check your local state as to how much money is going to be taken out of the behavioral health system because of the decreased investment in Medicaid over the course of the next decade. And it doesn't add up, Renee, that we're taking away all of those types of supports that help keep our economy moving. It keeps our employees safe, it keeps them healthy, it keeps them engaged, because that lost productivity is because of higher healthcare utilization and all those
Yeah.
other indirect costs. If less people have health insurance, they're still going to the doctor more frequently, especially if they're sicker. Who's going to
Yeah.
pay for that? It's going to be passed on to everyone who has health insurance. And so that's unattainable.
Yeah, or it gets stuck with hospitals having to pay the charity bills, and small hospitals just don't have that kind of cash sitting around to pay for all of the unpaid for care, and it just gets cost shifted.
Yeah.
It's not gone away. It's not reducing costs. It's shifted it to who gets the burden, and it's becoming challenging. So because of all these still challenges and so all of this, we're still talking about some of the same things, and some things that may be changing and looking at this landscape. We're going to do what we call more of a deeper dive and kind of focus in on details of things that we've learned on the ground since the name of this series. So there's gonna be 4 topics. I'm gonna go through them and name them all, and then I'm gonna go back and let Jason kind of comment on all of them. The first is like the barriers to the behavioral health system. We'll talk about that. Care collaboration, chatting about what that looks like on a deeper dive. System change without pain. I'm looking forward to this one. That's going to be fun. And then the last one is no wrong door possible. So those are the 4 topics we're going to dive into for the next 4 weeks. So Jason, thinking about barriers to a behavioral health system, kind of what do you hope to kind of dive into when we start thinking about that topic? What are you thinking about now that you've been on the ground and seeing this across? What kind of ideas come into mind?
Well, I mean, to be honest, when we're out in rural states and talking with providers, what are the biggest barriers to behavioral health system? Well, it's going to cross over to the second one, collaboration,
Yeah,
because it's just getting along with each other. It literally is just picking
right,
up the phone and working together. I mean, our biggest barriers is each other. And the lines that are drawn in the sand, or the boundaries of the district to the region to the county
right.
line to the district line, you whatever it is, we create our own barriers.
Yep. So that kind of ties into number two, care collaboration. I'm sure we've got lots of good stories about this, but one of the things I've loved about you coming back is you're telling me that you had the exact same conversation. It doesn't matter where you are about
Everywhere.
the hospital CEO, the big provider in community doesn't know the behavioral health community providers in that community
I,
over and
I
over
love
again.
it. I will sit and talk with a team of people at a CCBHC, for example, and they'll tell me how wonderful they are at collaborating and transitioning patients and all of the things that are like, it's like reading the SAMHSA CCBHC guidebook. It's beautiful. I'm like, this is fantastic. Like, how could this small community implement something to fidelity and deliver such a great service to the residents? And I'll walk across the street to the hospital and I will get the exact opposite story from the emergency room physician, the social worker, everyone. And I'm
Yeah,
like, how can it be so different just 500 yards away that
right.
everyone's seeing this differently? And so, how can that be so fragmented? It
And
really,
what's wild is people think you're making it up, but I
oh,
mean, I've had this conversation numerous times in different states and different locations. I mean, I could start naming states, but I won't. And I mean, just on top of my mind. And then you've gone to extra states that I didn't even go to, and you did
yeah,
it all over again. It's
yeah,
insane how consistently bad this piece of this is. It's just consistently
absolutely.
bad. It's
Yes.
unbelievable. All right. So then thinking from that perspective to system change without pain, wow. I'm
What
excited what you
what were
think.
we thinking when we wrote that one?
I'm not
I'm trying
sure.
to
I'm like, what
understand
are we
what that
talking
means.
about here? How is it going to be not painful? I mean, there's ways to make it not painful. And one of the things is your upside down triangle you like to talk about. So maybe we'll dive into that some. It's upside down, folks,
I,
because the point's at the bottom and that means the triangle falls over. But anyway, and Jason didn't make it. Author did, but I'm still confused. But basically, everybody wants to do transformational change first before we fix the boring stuff.
hmm
And a lot of
We
times those boring things need to be fixed. So, like that conversation previously we've had about the rule being fixed, right?
right.
That rule needs to be fixed. That's a boring piece, but it sounds like that's a massive roadblock in some of the issues that are going on in our state trying to get some levels of care for children. Well, fix the freaking rule. That's not hard to fix, but you have to start with some boring things first. So, part of it is system change in the right order, and
Correct.
then probably having the right people as a champion to help make it so. Will make it much less painful.
And this is our mindset, right? Like change doesn't have to be painful.
No?
Change can be good for everyone. But a lot of times we get this idea that change is bad, change is
Oh,
painful,
boy.
and it's not, right? Change is part of evolving and moving forward. And so, I think we've got to think about how do we start to do things differently when we've been stuck doing it the same way for a really, really, really long time. I mean, I often tell you about I'm a Kwanian, right? And we think about service clubs
You're
and
Kwani.
how service clubs are losing members. It's just like bowling leagues. We talk about this when we do our talks that people don't connect in that way anymore, and younger generations don't do that. And my Kiwanis Club, I'm on the board again this year because I don't say no to stuff. And so we're going through transformational change. I'm doing some work with them, Renee. And
Good,
and we
good.
brought them along to the point of we're thinking outside of the box and doing things differently. And everyone's attitude is this is what we have to do to move forward if we're going to fulfill the mission of helping kids, because that's what Kiwanis do. We got back to the mission, we got back to the focus,
Yeah.
and change means doing things differently. It means we're
Yeah,
not going to do the
and
same
you
thing
made
we've
some
always done.
changes. You made some changes in that post-COVID because you were doing some online stuff and got to add some extra people to make your group a little fresher. And then
Yeah.
you stayed online and helped them figure
Yep.
that out so that you could have more people come
Absolutely.
who couldn't get there for the lunch. And
Right.
that's already, I mean, that's a big change. So you've already got the group primed for change and they've seen probably
Exactly.
value in that. So that's part of like, how do you do it without pain is you have to test it, show that it works, remind people that the last
Exactly.
changes were good. And you have to kind of go back and celebrate those wins and remind people that, hey, we've changed before and you like the change. And so
Right.
sometimes but you have to say it 1,000 bazillion times. The communication component of change without pain is massive
Right.
because you have to remind people over and over and over, this is a good thing. These are the vision on this. It
And
could be
and we're
great.
going to dive into the key components that have to happen on this episode because I think that's going to be really important to listen to because
Me
so
too. I think it's
oftentimes we
going to be
don't do
good.
the right steps. I can't wait.
Yeah, me either. And the last one that we're going to do for this particular series is no wrong door possible? We talk about it all the dang time. No wrong door. And so with this, I mean, is it possible, Jason? What do you
It,
think? I mean, maybe you don't want to
it,
spoil it for everybody, but
well, I'm not sure what I'm going to say in that episode yet. It's still like 4 weeks away. I'm going to say this. I think we've tried to create the no wrong door instead of going to where the no wrong door actually is. And I
oh,
think there's my quote, right?
yeah, love it. Love
So
that.
so I think we got to figure out like which door is the wrong door and which door is the right door, and then we need to stack all of the services at the door where people actually go. And no one's willing to do that, Renee. And so we're pushing back pretty hard and saying you've created a bunch of wrong doors, literally. And so it's time we go to the door where everyone goes, and you need to figure out how to make it work.
Love it. And if they accidentally go to this other door, they should be rerouted to the right door.
Exactly. So I
Love
think
that.
it's not a no wrong door, possibly. Possibly, I think it's going to be go to the right door, and we're going to put big neon signs that say right door because there's too many wrong doors in our system today.
Right. And there's some places that they try to name a door, and you're like, that would be the worst place ever for somebody to show. And try to, maybe they just shouldn't be on the list. I like it. It's a
You know how
nice,
many times I've
refreshing.
gone and knocked on that door that they said was not the wrong door, and it
Yeah.
was not a place who would help anyone.
Right. All right. So the next 4 weeks, everybody coming up is barriers to behavioral health systems. We're going to talk about care collaboration, systems without pain, and then is no wrong door possible? And maybe we're asking the totally wrong question. Before we go today, though, I want to dive into the recovering politician self care policy of the week. So I set a new bunch of goals for getting stronger. So there's a list of 10 things. There's several lists out there, but there's one specifically that's 10 that I should be able to do with weight, like how much weight I should be able to lift for a person of my age. It's actually younger than me, but whatever, I'm going to do it anyway. And so I'm working on getting stronger and heavy lifting. And what I found is when I lift heavy, I sleep really good. Now I have to have recovery days because my body doesn't just go, go, go. So I have to actually take days off, which is I'm not accustomed to. So I'm doing better at that. But man, my sleep is better. And so when I lift heavy, and then I don't have to go as long of a workout, but I can do a short workout and be really strong. I actually sleep better, and so I'm really excited about doing this and kind of diving into something new and different. And it gives me some new goals to kind of work on because I always like to lift, but I never had like anything to shoot for. So I'm kind of excited about it. And I'll have to share with Jason at one point. They call one the farmer carry, which is hilarious.
Oh,
It's
really?
basically me carrying very heavy kettlebells, but they call it the farmer carry. So every time I think of it, I think of him because I was like, I don't even
Could
think he
just
would
bale some
appreciate
hay. We might put some hay in this year. We'll have you come up and you could just throw some bales
Oh, I'm
around
so
and we'll call
allergic,
it
but
good.
thank you
Yeah.
for trying. So next week again, we're going to be focusing on all of those overlooked barriers and the behavioral system change. And we're going to think of some, not the ones you always talk about. It's not going to be workforce. It's not going to be, you don't have enough money. It's not going to be those things. It's going to be the things that actually matter and that you can do something about. So we're talking about that next week. So please join us. But before we go today, don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. If you leave us a positive review, we send you a prize. Thanks everybody for talking to us. We'll see you soon.